Today I'll be presenting on the 2017 Equifax data breach. What was the 2017 Equifax data breach? Equifax is a credit reporting agency company, and from May to July 2017, Equifax had a known security hole that had been exploited by hackers to access 147 million data files, including information like names, social security numbers, credit card information, birth dates, addresses, driver's license numbers, and more. In January of 2020, Equifax agreed to pay $1.38 billion, including nearly $1 billion in security upgrades and $575 million to help people affected by the breach. A little bit more background on the data breach itself. In a more technical sense, the vulnerability that was exploited by the hackers was known as the Apache Struts Web Application Vulnerability, CVE 2017 5638. The Apache Struts Foundation announced this vulnerability and released a patch on March 7, 2017. In a more procedural sense, the hackers didn't access the data from Equifax's core consumer credit reporting databases, but instead from their U.S. online dispute portal web application that was actually maintained by the Apache Struts Foundation itself. Equifax actually became aware of the vulnerability 2 days after it had been announced, but didn't patch it until months later. In a more social sense, Equifax collects information on over 800 million consumers, and in this data breach alone, 147 million customers had their information stolen. Why is the 2017 Equifax data breach important to study? Secure IT operations need to be as comprehensive as possible in a range of security controls as seen in this data breach. If they are not, important private information can be accessed by those who shouldn't have access to it. It also isn't enough to only have some security controls and products in place, because constant adoption of security best practices at all levels throughout an organization is essential. It is also important to be aware of Equifax in their data breach in 2017, because other companies, as well as Equifax themselves, can learn from their mistakes, because chances to prevent and detect the breach were missed, so being thorough and taking efficient action is important. The data breach also shows the need to create realistic risk management frameworks for vulnerability assessment results, because doing so is one of the top ways to maintain security and reduce the attack surface. A little bit more about the attack vector. On September 13, 2017, Equifax revealed the attack vector was the Apache Struts CVE 2017 5638 vulnerability. This vulnerability allows remote attackers to execute commands via a crafted content type, content disposition, or content length HTTP header. This vulnerability also has a base severity score of 10, which means it has been designated as critical. The diagram below displays the actions the attackers took to steal the information. First, they scanned the web for vulnerable servers, found that the Equifax server was vulnerable, stole the information, and then over the duration of 76 days, accessed the 147 million files. Consequences of the attack. Equifax customers had personal information stolen by these unknown hackers, which meant that they experienced personal and emotional damage due to this emotional distress of having this information stolen and having to deal with the repercussions of that. Equifax also experienced financial damage since they had to pay over $1 billion to fix the vulnerability and improve security operations, and they also settled for $575 million to help repay customers who were affected. To help regain public trust and trust of their customers, they also started to offer free credit monitoring and identity theft services, and also had stronger data security requirements. Analysis of the attack. Although Equifax was the main target, the customers were also secondary victims, and in turn, the reduced public trust in credit reporting agencies was a tertiary casualty. This 2017 Equifax data breach was one of the worst cyber breaches ever, since so many people were affected. There actually had only been 4 other cyber breaches larger in scale than this one, including 2 Yahoo breaches in 2016, 1 MySpace breach in 2016, and 1 LinkedIn breach in 2012. Response to the attack. Equifax created a separate domain, equifaxsecurity2017.com, for consumers to find out if their information was compromised. However, this site was flagged as a phishing threat by browsers, meaning it was easier for attackers to create fake imitation sites and confuse people. Developer Nick Sweeting bought the domain security@equifax2017.com to demonstrate how confusing Equifax's decision was. This demonstrated how URL hijacking and typo squatting can hinder cybersecurity in the sense that Equifax Security 2017.com and Security Equifax2017.com are 2 very similar URLs and could have easily been mistaken for each other by consumers just trying to find out if their information was compromised by simply switching the Equifax and security in the URL itself. Equifax actually even tweeted the fake URL created by Sweeting on their official Twitter account in response to consumers trying to find resources. Board members who knew about the cyber attack sold their stock before the breach was made public, which led to accusations of insider trading. Overall, Equifax's response to the attack was not good. Security expert Brian Krebs said that Equifax's public outreach after the breach was haphazard, ill-conceived, and a dumpster fire. Lessons learned. Companies might choose not to secure IT operations due to not having the budget, not having the time, or not having enough personnel, but this complacency is dangerous. Companies need to be proactive and prepared because there will always be the chance of cyber attack. Incidents like the data breach of 2017 for Equifax helps companies make the case for having adequate budget, staff, and training to be able to secure the organization. It also shows the importance of patching, segmenting your networks, and training on incident reporting and being able to flag issues as soon as possible. In conclusion, Equifax is one of the 3 largest consumer credit reporting agencies, so having secure operations is critical, as it could affect millions upon millions of people. If Equifax isn't able to adequately secure their operations, they could end up paying financial compensation as they did within this data breach again. They could also experience loss of trust within the public and their customers themselves, as well as a hindered reputation. And their customers themselves will also experience damage and be now required to secure their own information once again. It just shows that people should be more cautious about what service providers they choose and to be more aware of security protocols that these companies have. Here are my citations for the sources I have used for this presentation. And finally, we have some questions to leave you with. How could Equifax prevent a data breach from happening to them again in the future? What security measures could Equifax employ to further safeguard the private information of their customers? And what could Equifax do to regain the trust of their customers? Thank you for watching.